Thank you, Chair. I'm going to try and finish before my time is finished. Good morning, Mr. Sullivan.
Morning.
Thank you for joining us again. I'm not going to repeat everything that was said before. I want to refer back to your relationship with Mr. Zunaid Moti. I want to understand, you previously described yourself in the media as Mr. Moti's friend, or business associate and consultant. But in 2012, and I know you have explained some of it, but just for the record, in 2012 you called him the head of a private army of thugs and accused him of conspiracy to commit murder. When did you stop investigating Mr. Moti and start getting paid by him?
First of all, it's not a case of getting paid by him because that's now following another narrative. But I've got to.
Apologies. No, let me say it right. I don't want to create a misperception. We started doing business or working for him.
So, I've got a timeline here. So, a criminal case was opened against various parties, one of which was Zunaid Moti in 2011. And that's my forensic practice, we were hired by a chap by the name of Naim Qasim. In those days, my practice was called Paul O'Sullivan Associates. It's now called O'Sullivan Brosnan and Associates. And between late 2011 and you can say probably mid or early 2013, I was under the impression that Moti and some of his associates had a case to answer in respect of a case of attempted murder, where a Mercedes motor vehicle with Naim Qasim in it had left, what do you call it, where they gamble, a casino on the West Rand, and on his way home to Harderbeersport, he was ambushed. And we followed up on that ambush, and we were able to draw a link between certain individuals that were involved in the ambush and Mr. Zunaid Moti. So a docket was opened, and as a result of that docket, a number of people were arrested, one of which included Zunaid Moti. And then what happened in August 2013, the state, and I've got the name down here, in fact we know her today as Advocate Andrea Johnson. At that time she was Deputy Director or in the office of North Gauteng. I think she reported under the Director of Prosecutions in North Gauteng. She made a decision not to proceed against Moti. And she did that, and there was a kind of a 2-year period there. She did that after his lawyers made representations. And I was then supplied, because we were lobbying for all of them to be prosecuted, and I was then supplied with a copy of that representation. And when I saw the representation, it made common sense, because it just happened that he was in the wrong place at the wrong time, and I'm not defending him on that. But then what happened in 2014, which is the next year, I terminated the relationship with Naim Qasim. And the reason there were 2 reasons I terminated the relationship. The first reason, he hadn't paid his fees. He told me he was short of cash, and he gave me an envelope full of post-dated checks. And when we started putting the post-dated checks through the bank, they all bounced. So I then went to him and I said, listen, your checks are bouncing. And then what we found out was he had been committing the offense of extortion. He had tried to manipulate a settlement, a civil settlement on the alleged criminal charges against Zunaid Moti. And the amount he wanted was 100 million rand to make the case go away. So I said, we're not prepared to be involved in anything of that nature, and your checks are bouncing. So I then issued a summons against him, and I terminated the mandate. And as a result of issuing that that summons, I got judgment. And the judgment was taken on the 5th of February 2015 against Naeem Kassim in the amount of 1,543,505 rand and 7 cents of unpaid fees based on the bounced checks, plus interest and legal costs. So we have that judgment. I can show it to you. So that was kind of the end of all that. And then what happened, it wasn't, I didn't go knocking on the door of Moti and said, now I'm going to be your friend. I had invested in a company called Old Fashioned Fish and Chips. And I had lent that company, I can't remember the exact figure, so don't get me perjurious for remembering it's a long time ago, but I had lent that company approximately 6 million rand. And in the return for the loan of 6 million rand, I took security. And the security I took for the loan was an amount of, the security I took for the loan was the shares in the company, all of the shares with signed blank dated share transfer forms. So now they had, I think, 6 months to repay me this money. And if they didn't repay me, I could then sell the company. And as it got towards the end of that 6 million rand loan, I think they still owed me they had made some repayments, but they still owed me 4 million. And they asked me to release the shares. And I said, no, I'm not going to, because that's my only security. And I went and dealt with a company, I can't remember the name, it's a public company, and I offered to sell them Old Fashioned Fish and Chips. And the price we were closing in on was about 15 million rand. Now, I didn't want to make a profit out of the loan, so my arrangement, and I put it to the owner of Old Fashioned Fish and Chips, you owe me 4 million, I'm going to sell your shares in 3 weeks' time for 15 million, and I'll refund you the difference that you owe me, because I don't want to make a profit. I just want what we were going to do. Then that lady, elderly Portuguese lady, she then said, leave it to me, I'll be back in a week with the funds. And a week later, I got an unsolicited phone call from Zunaid Moti. And he said, Paul, I don't know if you want to talk to me or not, because we had some strange moments. And this was now in 2014. And I said, what's the issue? He said, well, the issue is this. I've been offered to buy your loan in Old Fashioned Fish and Chips. And he said, I understand that you've got another buyer lined up and you can sell it and make a big profit. I said, I'm not interested in making a profit. I made a loan, I just want my money back. So he then said to me, would you have any objection if I go and I pay them the money to buy those shares or to lend them money? It won't just be your 4 million, I'll lend them more and I'll take security of the same shares. I said, I have no objection as long as I get my 4 million. And then what happened was the lady phoned me and she said, we've decided to sell to Zunaid Moti, he's going to pay us the money. So I phoned him and I said, listen here, my advice to you is not to pay them the money, because if they don't pay it to me, I'm not releasing the shares. So he then got some attorney involved, and the attorney held the money, and then I got my 4 million, I handed over the shares, and that was the deal done with him. So I then, at that moment in time, met with him, and then I explained to him how I had fired Naeem Kassim, and that the reason I'd fired him wasn't just over the bounced checks, that he owed me 1.5 million or 1.6 million because there were costs involved. And I said, but he also tried to extort you. He said, yes, I know, he wanted 100 million. So I then said, you know, that's really bad. He shouldn't be doing that. So after that, Zunaid Moti has, I believe, plus minus 250 companies, and they're involved in very diverse areas: logistics, shipping, import, export, mining, transport, aviation, all sorts of things. And he then said to me, I'm quite impressed with your level of ethics, that you didn't want to profit on this fish and chips deal. I said, from time to time, we have forensic work that needs to be carried out. Would you be prepared to render those services for one or other of the companies? And I said, well, I have no objection. And at that point in time, we did what we always do, which is a due diligence, which includes getting the criminal record checks that we do, because we don't act for criminals. So he had a clear criminal record. We got the, what do you call it, police clearance certificate. I asked him for a police clearance certificate, which he gave us. So I was satisfied that we could do business with him. And I think between the period of 2015 and now, we have carried out investigations for various of his companies. And not only that, in 2015, I think it was, or 2016, or maybe 2017, one year there, I identified a property opportunity and I didn't have enough cash. I said, listen, I've got a deal here. I can buy 10 properties for whatever million of rand. And I said, it's a deceased estate. I've met with the executor. He'll take an offer of that amount, and I don't have enough cash. If you want to come in on that deal, you can, and we'll split the profit down the middle. And that's exactly what happened. So I then got involved in a property transaction with him as well.
Okay, but thank you. So we have that for the record then. I want to move to the relationship, or whether you know anything about the relationship between General Shadrach Sibiya and General Feroz Khan. And if you don't, it's fine. Again, it's to determine if there is a significant relationship.
Well, I'm bound under oath, and I'm going to tell the truth. So the truth is, as I mentioned in the last, I don't know if you call it a meeting, I suppose you call it a meeting, but in the last session, I mentioned that I have a relationship with Shadrach Sibiya, and it's purely a professional relationship. I mentioned that I don't even know where he lives. I've never had a restaurant meal with him. He did attend, while he was working at Joburg City Council, he did attend a braai, a Christmas braai. Feroz Khan, I know of. I've had several meetings with him. I'm not sure what he does now, because I haven't seen him for a while, but at one stage he was involved in crime intelligence in Gauteng. And it appeared to me at one stage, and I didn't get this from the horse's mouth, so neither of them said anything negative about the other to me, but it appeared to me at one stage that there was some kind of a fallout or toxicity between them, but it's only from what I read in the media.
And then, were you at any stage introduced to a Mr. Rashad Ismail by either Mr. Moti, General Sibiya, or General Khan, or a combination of the likes?
I don't know who Rashad Ismail is.
Okay.
Is it, if you, I meet a lot of people. If you can tell me what this profession is or what he does?
I'll come back to it now.
Okay.
Just for the sake of time, I want to ask you a little bit more about your comment on General Nhlanhla Mkhwanazi after the press conference. And then after that, I want to ask you one or two policy-related questions. In terms of General Mkhwanazi, you, as I remember correctly, said, you repeated it several times, that he's not a task force member and that he had no business in wearing that uniform. Just for clarity, you're aware today that he is in fact qualified to wear that uniform and is authorized to.
Is that a question?
It's a question.
So, the point I made at the time, Chairman, was that he wasn't a task force member. He was a divisional commissioner for KZN. And he had previously been a task force member some years before that. And the point I made at the time was that this whole media conference, and it's, by the way, somewhere included in my statement, and I put a picture in one of the annexes, where you've got a person dressed in combat uniform, task force uniform, and you're not a task force member, you were some years prior to that. In my opinion, and this is just my opinion, it's my personal opinion, and bearing in mind at that stage, I knew already of his involvement in trying to sabotage the investigation into General Pashlani by soliciting and hiring people from IPID to come and work in the police and leave IPID and in return give information against Robert McBride. So I was aware of that. Now, at the same time, I was also aware, although I had no specific prima facie evidence, there was a media article which has been repeated in my sworn statement that identifies the relationship between General Masemola and General Mkhwanazi back in 2012, when an alleged amount of 35 million was spent on buying luxury motor cars without going through any tender process whatsoever. And I was able to identify that one of those cars was a Mercedes ML350 that found its way into the hands of the then Minister of Police for private use. And the regulations, internal police regulations concerning the purchase of motor cars from the slush fund, I still call it the slush fund, we call it the Secret Service account, whatever you want. I call it a slush fund because it's been a slush fund for 25 years. The cars purchased from the slush fund are never supposed to be given or used by registered, known publicly police officials. And they bought 35 million rands worth of cars and shared them out, which included cars that went to people at police head office. And there's no doubt about that. And the whole thing was brushed under the woodwork. So I made the comment that appearing on the 6th of July media conference with 8 armed men with automatic weapons, dressed in combat uniform and masks, was it a media conference or was it an operation that was going to take place? And it gave the absolute impression to me, when I looked at the presentation that he did, it gave the absolute impression to me that he was creating a red herring for the criminal activity that goes on in crime intelligence. And I think that is a fact, and it can be proven, and it will unroll when we see the criminal trial taking place of the 5 generals and 2 brigadiers from crime intelligence, because I believe what he was effectively doing, and I have no axe to grind for any of the generals in the police, whether it's Sabir or whoever, I have no axe to grind. But the reality of it, that media conference was not only dishonest, it was divisive, and it was intended to distract attention away from what's been going on in the police in KZN.
Thank you, Mr. Sullivan. 2 more questions. The one is, can you confirm how you obtained, or from who you obtained, the affidavit purportedly deposed to by Mr. Nangi, particularly given that the specific affidavit appears to be identical in substance and form to the affidavit previously circulated by General Sonona to Kat Matlala?
Okay, so I don't know General Sonona, and the first I heard about Kat Matlala was what I saw in the media. But what I did see last year was a story in the media. I think it's included in my statement, and I can't refer to the paragraph right now, but I've attached a copy of the media article, and I think it was Sunday World. I can't remember which. I think it was Sunday World. And when I saw this article, it piqued my interest. Now, you know, most journalists, they write articles based on what they have in front of them. And if you can get a trusted relationship with a journalist, you can get them to supply you with some information. So I phoned the journalist in question, and I said to him, I'd like to investigate this a little bit further. And the reason I wanted to investigate it further, Chairman, is because one of the people named there is a Colonel Darwood. And that's the same Colonel Darwood that kidnapped a member of my staff. And it's the same Colonel Darwood that was involved in taking my cell phone unlawfully, which Pashlani then read out in Parliament. And it's the same Colonel Darwood that threatened to assault me. So I realized that there's somehow a link there. So I then asked that journalist, I would like to investigate this matter a lot further. Would you be kind enough to share with me the affidavit? I first of all phoned Ricardo Angelo or something, the attorney, because his name was mentioned in the article. So I tracked him down and I asked him, can you share that affidavit with me? He said, let me check with my client. He checked with his client, he phoned me back, he said, Paul, the client doesn't want you to see it. So then I got the journalist to supply it. After I got it, I then phoned the attorney again. I said, listen, I've got it, but I'd like to actually meet face to face with your client because there's a few issues I have with this affidavit and I'd like to just unpack it. And he said, let me come back to you. And he came back to me and he said to me, it seems to me that the client doesn't want to see you. I then formed the opinion, Chairman, that some parts of that affidavit were probably truthful and some of it probably not. But I wanted to get to the bottom of those aspects of it that I was interested in, which was what he referred to in his affidavit as the torture and the assaults that took place at some farm somewhere in KZN in front of General Mkhonasi, where General Mkhonasi was alleged to have made comments. And then the tape recording of the wife of Nangi or Nanji, I don't know how you say it, the tape recording, which was included in the affidavit, of how Darwood phoned this woman and she tape recorded the call, and Darwood is saying to her, if we don't get the truth out of you, we're going to chop your husband up and send him back to you in a cardboard box. So that was what I wanted to drill down into. I had no axe to grind for Nanji. I've never met him, spoken to his lawyer. If somebody asked for my personal opinion would probably be that, you know, the truth is there, but there's some fabrication stuff there. He denies being involved in certain events, but I would imagine if the police had gone about it the correct way, instead of torturing him and assaulting him, they might well have had a conviction by now, but that's not the way they went about it. So they poisoned their own well.
Then, in terms of policy, if you were to have a magic wand and you could tackle the organized crime crisis being run from inside SAPS, sadly, in some cases, 2 or 3 things that you would kick off with to try and resolve this?
Yeah, thank you. That's a really great question, and I want to refer quickly, if I can, to paragraph 171 and it's not long, so I can just read it out. Bless you. I said there's only one, sorry for the typo, there's only one way to fix it. The question is, how can the criminal justice system be fixed? I said there's only one way to fix it. It needs a zero-tolerance campaign together with a change in legislation. So I'm grateful to have the opportunity to present to this committee my ideas, because I'm not a legislator, you guys are. Together with a change in legislation, so that any police officer or prosecution official, no matter the rank, is immediately and automatically suspended following being arrested or charged with any offence involving dishonesty. and I'm particular about offence involving dishonesty, because sometimes they might be arrested for drink driving or, and I'm not saying that that should be condoned, but it shouldn't stop a person doing it. And then I said, any employee in the CJS, that's the criminal justice system, convicted of any offence involving dishonesty should be automatically dismissed. And that would require a change in the legislation. Then I'm also saying probative tests should be carried out on all candidates for senior appointments in the criminal justice system. There's no probative tests being done. If they did probative tests, Masamolo wouldn't be chief of police today. Pashlani would have never been chief of police. You know, they need to do these probative tests. And I'm saying we need to develop the law in South Africa, the common law offence of abuse of public office, because it is a common law offence. There's no act. So it's a common law offence. Believe it or not, there's lots of offences which are common law, and they've been developed through trials and appeals and stuff like that. It's time we woke up in South Africa and developed the common law offence of abuse of public office. Because overseas, if you abuse public office, you go to prison. In this country, you get nothing. You might get fired if you're unlucky. But the chances are you can abuse your office and carry on working. And then if you start sending people to prison for abusing public office, it's going to send out a very clear signal. And I think I also said that, and it's probably not mentioned here, that it should be a criminal offence for any senior police official to ignore a DPCI judge report. And I've included in my submission 2 DPCI judge reports with scathing attacks on generals in the police. And nothing happened to any of them. They were covered up, they were protected. And I'm saying that should be a criminal offence. DPCI judge recommended disciplinary proceedings. Nothing happened. The counting officer of the police should have been criminally charged for that. Those generals could have been gone. And if you get rid of people out of the police with bad ethics, you're going to clean up the police. And you don't start at the bottom, you start at the top and work your way down. And if we could do that in South Africa, we would turn the ship around, and we will get the rule of law back in South Africa. You know, I talked to some really, really good cops, career policemen, fantastic, the salt of the earth. And they feel so betrayed by senior police management. And if we can get the stability back into the police and get the ethics back into the police. Once upon a time, a policeman was proud to be a policeman. Now they keep quiet about it because they're seen as a scum of the earth. For what? Because 5 or 10% of their leaders are corrupt. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. And thank you, Mr. Sullivan.
Thank you so much.